Legendary. How are you doing? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, GM.
Well,
I'm doing great. I'm pretty excited for today's episode.
what's going on with our weekly podcast where we've done 4 weeks but had two breaks already? How is that acceptable? What's going on here?
It is more like a bi-weekly now, but that's that's not what we've planned for. And I think we have to be more because both of us have been traveling quite a lot. You've been moving into your new place, obviously, and I think we have to not rely on recording in our home studio all the time, but be more flexible and maybe be willing to recording while traveling, so that we can stick with the weekly format that we were
Yeah,
initially planning for.
yeah. The question I always think now, because with the papers, like I refuse to say that we're doing anything other than weekly, even if we miss a few, because for the papers I have missed a few every now and again. But when you look back over time, there's no point me saying, oh, for the last 18 weeks minus three, I have written a
Yeah,
paper. Like it just ruins the flow. It ruins the,
yeah, you
yeah.
cannot call it your almost weekly series of papers, right?
No, exactly. So this is the weekly podcast, which will be coming weekly from now on because we are more settled in the place. You have your sound set up and your two microphones and your two computers. I have a ridiculous setup at the moment, which will be, I'll have to take a photo and share it on Twitter because it's so stupid.
Yeah, you have to share that.
Yeah,
And I got the second mic exactly for not that I simulate a press conference here, but rather for traveling, that I have something to take with me.
yeah, that's good because that'll be useful in the future. But mine is an iPad case, a toaster box, with the toaster inside, I think, because I haven't actually taken the toaster out yet. So that's um, that's how professional we're doing things here. Um, so yeah, yesterday we announced something quite cool. So the general thing that we'll talk about today, we're going to get into Luna and UST because it was like the big event from the last week. Was it only last week? It feels like ages ago, or that it's been on people's minds for a long time. So we're going to get into that, all the details, and a little bit of analysis on that. We're going to talk a little bit about your travels and what you're up to, but let's start with the cool announcement we made yesterday. What's going on with airdrop season, Legendary?
Airdrop season, yeah. Last year has been pretty interesting in terms of protocols and projects basically shifting their governance mechanisms, putting their governance into the community's hands. And often they did that by retroactively rewarding their users that have been early adopters, that have been using the platforms, that have been experimenting with the protocols and platforms. And we've seen quite some major airdrops last year. We've seen DY, DX, we've seen ENS, obviously Uniswap. And this year was also off to a good start. And I feel like the North Star of things happening this year are layer 2 solutions, layer 2 basically being built on top of Ethereum mainnet, being a trustless solution that allows to scale Ethereum, that allows for way more transactions per second than Ethereum can currently handle, which then again means that as a result of basic supply and demand, doing transactions and transacting on layer 2 is way cheaper than it currently is on mainnet, which is incredibly important, right? Because if you're like new to the space, you're getting in, and you have to use Uniswap or other protocols for the first time, and you want to, play around with a couple of $100, and then you spend $50, $60, $70 on staking, transaction fees, whatever, it doesn't make sense to do that. And this is where layer 2 solutions come in, also important in terms of gaming, where basically everything that you do in a game, equipping an item, breeding to unicorns or whatever it is, causes a transaction again on the blockchain. And this has to be nearly cost-free, because otherwise you would be paying so much money just to play a game, which doesn't make sense at all. And we are in a very exciting phase right now with Arbitrum basically being about to launch their Odyssey campaign, which is going to be 2 months packed of weekly challenges and quests that are bound to make you explore Arbitrum as a layer 2 solutions to interact with decentralized finance protocols, with NFT marketplaces, with games like Battlefly that are already on Arbitrum's layer 2 solution. And this all is part of this big campaign that will reward users participation with weekly NFTs. And there's been a couple of rumors going on that this might lead to a potential airdrop by Arbitrum, which of course is still speculation right now because nothing has been confirmed. But also many of the protocols that are involved in this Odyssey campaign could also launch their own token, and some of them certainly will do that with Xena token launch, with Hop Exchange, which is a multi-chain, cross-chain exchange that allows you to move your funds, for example, from mainnet to layer 2. And there's, of course, competitors like Connex that could be theoretically the next to have their own token airdrop. And with so many protocols, with so much complexity around that, I think it's 56 protocols that were just eligible for the Odyssey campaign on Arbitrum. We plan to structure all this information and put it into basically our first, so to speak, official product, the Airdrop Szn. And if you wanted to elaborate on that a bit more.
Yeah, so I think the first point, which I completely agree with, is that layer 2, and bearing in mind, I'm not one of the tech people, and that is a lot of information for people to digest and take in. Some of the immediate feedback I got after releasing the information yesterday was exactly what I had thought, which was, this is cool because I'm aware of this stuff. Like, I keep on top of this stuff. Like, I'm always on the lookout for this stuff. However, when it comes round to it, I don't know how to do it. It's too difficult to navigate. I can't stay on top of it. So I think it really assists the people who do not have the time to check in on every layer 2 solution and don't have the kind of technical understanding to, or technical confidence even, to throw their money around from different chains and moving all these assets from one place to another. So I think it's really, it should be very, very helpful for that reason. And yes, the broader take on layer 2s, it feels like in Ethereum's development, this is the time for layer 2s to gain some prominence because of the discussions around Ethereum layer 1 being inefficient or too expensive to use for the normal average user, and particularly in times of very, very high usage and demand for block space. So I think there's a lot of things that make this product make sense. And to be clear to everyone and even to ourselves, it's, these things are not guarantees, but one of the things we will hope to look at and provide some analysis on is previous historical airdrops for how protocols have gone about rewarding their early participants, and then just some kind of strategies as to how you might seek to participate now. And I think on top of that, one of the big things is for people who aren't familiar with these types of things, it will just be really useful to play around and participate. You mentioned like playing around and participating on Uniswap, for example, if each transaction is $30, $40, $50, that's actually, from an educational perspective, really stinting people because they just can't access the game in a way. And that's not, if you took airdrops even out of the equation, it's useful just from an educational standpoint to deepen your knowledge, to further your understanding, to be participating in layer two, I think, in my opinion. So hopefully that's what we'll do, and we'll obviously release more details. We're still figuring certain details out. You're producing a paper today, a one pager today. I'm doing something similar. We will get this
Absolutely.
information. We'll get this information to you. So yeah,
And I think what's important to add here is that, you know, the airdrop season, it's not about farming airdrops. It's not about the Sybil attacks, so creating fake identities to maximize your potential airdrop outcome. It is really about genuine interaction with layer 2, with Arbitrum. It is about learning how to navigate the layer 2 solution. You mentioned Uniswap. You can use Uniswap on Arbitrum as well. You don't need to use a domain net. You have more than 300 decentralized apps, and I think it's a total of $3 billion in total value locked on Arbitrum. And it is a new ecosystem for many, especially if you've been transacting solely on mainnet. And this is where we want to step in and help with the educational aspect of it all. And yes, a potential outcome, but as you said, there is no guarantee to that. You might be eligible for an airdrop. We're going to look at the historical data to see how airdrops were conducted in the past, what outcomes there have been if we look at the top 10 airdrops last year. But obviously, it's never about, you know, guaranteeing an airdrop, and it's never about trying to game the system to farm an airdrop, because obviously all the protocols take very, very smart measures against doing that, and they try to reward genuine interaction, and this is what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, because I was thinking about this, and this was one of someone I respect quite a lot, this was one of their points of feedback, like how are you going to take into account those types of things? And I think it's a very fair question. But would I be right in thinking that this Arbitrum one, for example, it's literally designed as a quest to get you in?
It is designed as a quest to get you in, and it rewards you in NFTs that you can collect by participating.
Well, there you go. So my thinking would be that, look, the whole point. I mean, the question would be, well, how do you define farming, right? Like farming to me, or something pejorative or negative, is when like you're literally creating multiple identities, throwing the money around, and like, you know, using bots and running scripts and doing all this technical stuff that I don't even understand. The point of this Arbitrum one, for example, and then, you know, we've got other ones planned moving after that, is that they want you to come in and participate. And so that's what we will help you do, because I think that's where the issue is. I have seen previously loads of opportunities of this type of thing, but I, as a non-technical person, have always either not been bothered to take the extra step, or have found it too difficult to navigate because I haven't been super technically competent. So that's all that is the main thing we're being able to do, right? We're looking at historical data, we're showing what some of the possibilities might be, but in the end, we're just facilitating you to do what the protocols actually want you to do. They want you to come and quest in their thing. They want you to put your money and play around in their system, and that's what we'll be doing.
Exactly. We're gonna help in this process of exploring, and you mentioned protocols protecting themselves against these kind of Sybil attacks, these kind of, you know, false identities, and they're doing a pretty excellent job at that. Particularly Hop Exchange, which I mentioned before, the cross-chain bridge, did an amazing job at that. That's basically, of course, they tried to identify bot farms, scripts, false identities that have been created to quote unquote farm the airdrop, and then they published that data to the community, and they created a community incentive. They said, if you can prove that, you know, a bunch of addresses are a bot farm, they created those fake identities and just tried to maximize their airdrop gains. If you can prove that to us, then the bot farm doesn't get any airdrop at all, and your reward is, it was either 20 or 25% of the reward that otherwise the bot farm would have received. This is one mechanism. And on the other hand, you as a bot farm can turn yourself in and say like, hey, I don't want to be caught by the community. I know I did something wrong. I tried to game the system. And then you also get that 20 or 25% instead of, having the risk of not getting anything at all, because the community is going to work hard to try to expose those people who try to game the system, because they have a financial incentive to do so. And I think we could see this as a strategy that's going to become standard for airdrops in the future, because basically only Uniswap had the luxury of being the first to do an airdrop, and people not knowing that this airdrop would happen, and no one could game that because they were the first to do that, and there wasn't any expectation at all that this would happen. Of course, there were rumors, but no one was gaming and trying to prepare for that, because then after Uniswap, people started to create volume on other exchanges, on 1inch, and trying to see, okay, Uniswap did an airdrop, maybe all the others are going to do that. And there's always a race between people trying to be smarter than the protocols, and protocols obviously trying to protect their genuine user base and reward those users. And I think that there's no really a point in trying to game this system, because I think we'll see way more protection against that, and it doesn't make sense, especially if you have like a beautiful campaign like Arbitrum's Odyssey that tries to reward and will reward genuine interaction alone with the NFT rewards that they're creating for that.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. And I'm not super familiar with the stuff. I'm by no means an expert in this. That's why it's so helpful to be working on this with you. But I like the idea of this, the Odyssey, like the campaign, and the fact that it's a quest. I just think it's fun. I think it's cool that they're doing it. That people are getting more, just trying to do more interesting things to attract people. I think that's a cool way to go about things. Nice. So yes, we will release more details on all of this stuff. Please stay tuned for that information, and do DM us if you are interested to express an early interest. I've received quite a few DMs yesterday to express interest for individuals and on behalf of other communities as well. So we are very happy about that progress so far. So Legendary, you are off to VeeCon this week, right? When are you going?
Tomorrow. My flight's going tomorrow, 9-ish a.m. local time, departing from Vienna, flying to Amsterdam, and then it's directly to Minneapolis, and I'm going to be in Minneapolis in the early afternoon, again, local time in Minneapolis. And I'm going to stay for around a week at VeeCon. Nice. VeeCon, I think, starts on Thursday evening with the opening party. If you look at all the speakers, all the meetups, all the side events, and everyone who's going to attend, it's going to be pretty massive, and I'm super excited for that.
So who are you most excited to meet? Do you have your eye on anyone?
I have my eye on 2 meetups that I'm pretty excited about. Once again, Pixel Vault community meetup that we are currently trying to organize, and in a similar fashion as we did in Lisbon for NFC Lisbon, and also G-Funk is attending. So I already told him on Twitter that I'm going to bring my comic for him to sign it.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm going to bring the physical comic all the way from Europe to the States to get G-Funk's blessing on it, so to speak. This is nice. what I'm super excited for. And also the side event with Nate Alex and Chain Faces Arena. It's going to be pretty cool to go to that as well. And obviously, the loads and loads of speakers at the event itself with all the side stages, main stages. I mean, it's a pretty insane lineup, and I'm curious how it all will work out.
Are you going to go to the events? Like, are you going to? I guess this one might be a bit different. I don't know how. I haven't seen the lineup, but is it 'cause some of the previous ones, the big ones, they just seem to invite all sorts of people, like big names, but they're not necessarily even that deeply involved in the space. Is it is that the case this time? Like, are you going to try to attend all the stuff, or is it more about the networking on the side? Because that's what I found most useful in Lisbon, to be honest.
This was my Lisbon experience as well, and I already, have scheduled quite some meetings for my time there. But I'm also going to attend some of the big stages, main events, and I think Snoop Dogg, for example, is going to be there. And I mean, he is involved into the space, of course he is, but I'm curious how, this is going to work out with so many people trying to attend that, and obviously space being, a scarce resource. Because I think
What, space is scarce? Space is a scarce resource.
I mean, I think for some of the side events, they said that it's basically on a first come first served basis. If you'll be able to get a spot and attend that talk or format, and only the main stages are going to be open to all. And yeah, it's going to be a bit of both, I think.
Yeah,
but mostly because this was my Lisbon experience, excited about the side events, and also excited about meeting some friends that I've been, talking like forever on Discord. One of them, being top notch, who I think we've been talking for the last 2 years, and we didn't meet up in person yet, and we're gonna meet tomorrow, and I'm quite looking forward to that.
that's cool, man. It's always it is a bit nerve wracking, isn't it? Because they not say? I mean, it depends who you're meeting. Some people you see more as a peer, as opposed to like a leader or your hero or something. But you know how they say never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Because they'll always just disappoint you. Like you build up these pictures of people. It was like when I mean, this is not the same at all, but when Metapunk met me, it was just like, you don't look like a mutant at all.
Yeah.
Like this is not you're not the person that I thought you would be.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. Yeah.
So yeah, I find that whole aspect of all of our interactions quite funny in real life.
That's true. And I have to agree with Metapunk. You don't look like a mutant at all.
Well, I guess that's pretty good then, isn't it? Like it's not the worst thing to have.
Yeah,
to be accused of.
It's how we do compliments in the NFT space, right?
yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's so that'll be cool. We're gonna have to talk about how we get this work done at the same time while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we were in Lisbon, I basically worked all the time.
Yeah.
Like we met a little bit, but then most of the days I was still working. But yeah, that'll be cool to get these meetings in, I guess, and we'll need to talk separately about how we schedule all the stuff we need to do. But we'll deal with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's get into the main topic of the day/week, because it's just been such a significant piece of news, such a significant event, and I'm not certain if I understand it fully. I'm certainly not certain that everyone understands it fully, and maybe I don't know if many people ever understood it fully, because it seems to be the case that, especially from my conversations with you, that people were ignorant of certain aspects to it. So let's discuss UST and Luna. So we should probably start, I think, by like outlining what is UST and how is Luna related to it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's been a devastating week. When you look at Luna, UST, and the Terra blockchain, and I think it's important to understand like how those two tokens, UST as a stable coin or algorithmic stable coin on the one hand, and Luna on the other hand, interact with each other, and basically how the peg of UST is working. So basically, what you
this is
Yeah,
crucial.
what you can do is you can always redeem 1 UST for $1 worth of your Luna. So, or you can also redeem, 1 Luna for its equivalent value in UST. And in the background, there is this virtual AMM that works in a way similar to Uniswap and has the goal to balance those two tokens in such way that UST always equals $1. So if someone sells it off, it's going to make the AMM is going to make the next trade more favorable to restore the peg. This is how the system is supposed to work. And if you think about that, why would people want to have UST? Why would they want to have another stablecoin? So you need, as a protocol, you need to have an incentive for that. Or as a blockchain, you need to have an incentive for that. And the main incentive for people using UST was Anchor Protocol. And Anchor Protocol allowed you to deposit your UST into it and farm roughly 18 to 20% APR just with a stable coin alone. And this was, a massive catalyst to the growth of the Terra ecosystem. And of course, there have been like so many, projects and products that have been built on the Terra ecosystem, NFT projects, other exchanges, decentralized finance protocols, etc. But I think the main attractor was Anchor Protocol with its ability to have a stable coin and farm 20% per year. And, had like 14, 15, 16, 17 billion of US dollars worth stored in there, which you could also use to borrow against and work in more decentralized finance protocols with that. But I think this is, the important and the crucial part to understand is this interaction between UST and Luna and how you can burn one of the tokens to redeem the other token, and how in the background there's this big AMM that tries to balance it in such way that UST can hold its peg. And
Okay, so just to clarify that, so say you buy 1,000, like say you wanted exposure to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So would you buy Luna or UST? Like what's the point of their?
Well,
which one?
If you wanted exposure to the ecosystem, you would probably buy Luna, and you would probably stake your Luna. And if you wanted to, and this is what many people did, if you wanted to have another way to put money in stables and get an amazing APR on that, because 20% is a lot for just putting in a stable into a protocol, you would go down the UST route, or you would try to hold both tokens. But if you wanted, if you would believe that the Terra ecosystem would grow and grow and grow and become bigger and more relevant, you would obviously try to get the Luna token, because this is the one that would adjust with the demand.
So in a sense, you know how there are other stable coins which are backed by fiat, right? Like so, or stable coins which are backed by crypto. Is this stable coin backed by Luna?
It is backed by Luna and the algorithm trying to to hold the peg on the one hand, and on the other hand the LFG, the Luna Foundation Guard, started to buy Bitcoin and started to amass Bitcoin to have an additional reserve to add stability and resilience to the UST mechanism in such way. And this is what we've seen happening last week, that when the peg when UST depegs from its $1 value, that the LFG, the foundation, has the possibility to sell off some of their Bitcoin reserves, buy UST, and contribute towards restoring the peg faster, and not only having to rely on the algorithm. This was the game plan.
Okay, but this Bitcoin element where they were buying Bitcoin in order to then sell, well, that's sort of a reserve backup plan, right? Like the algorithmic stablecoin model. Am I right in thinking that that's not supposed to require this additional set of funds to buy, to sort of do it's sort of like a bailout, right?
It is an emergency measure if there's massive stress, sell-off pressure, if people are panicking, and or if there's an attack carried out of smaller scale. It is a measure where you can protect yourself against that. In addition to how the algorithmic design was supposed to keep UST to its $1 peg.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened then? So why did UST lose its peg?
Quite a lot of things happened. So first of all, I think it's important to understand that one place to trade UST Luna is obviously on the Terra blockchain. Other places are rept tokens on Ethereum mainnet, where you can buy rept Luna, and obviously you can buy those assets on many centralized exchanges as well. So there's many places where you can trade UST and Luna. And what happened first was a massive sell-off on Curve UST to the USDC swap, and this created the first imbalance. I think it was it was an 85 million sell-off that happened first, and this.
So sorry, just when you say that, like, there's this imbalance, just paint that picture again. So this is an imbalance
between in this case, between the UST and the USDC pool, which started to create a bit of FUD, and which led to people starting to withdraw UST from Anchor in a very rapid fashion. And this imbalance basically means that the peg started to move, and one UST suddenly was worth 97 or 98 cents if you were to swap for that. And this is now where the arbitrage opportunity would open up in the algorithmic stablecoin model, right? Because what you could do then is you can buy 97 cents. You can buy UST. You buy 1,000 UST, you pay $970 for that. We're ignoring fees and anything at the moment. And you then exchange them for $1,000 worth of Luna. This is what you would do. And this is, the arbitrage opportunity that would help to restore the peg, because the cheap, quote unquote, cheap UST is being bought up and is being redeemed for Luna worth more than that. And
I see. Okay. Because
you can, this is what, is called the on-chain peg, because you can always redeem for $1 of Luna. This was the idea of it. But
So is that what people were doing?
People were doing that all the time, and this is what kept UST pegged to $1, because this is how the system works. But the massive risk with that, or the concerns that some people had, is in case panic starts and people are selling off, the buying pressure on UST is not going to be high enough, because Luna is going to dump as well. So you would buy cheap UST and redeem it for, yes, a bit more Luna, but Luna would also dump. And this is, what has been described as the death spiral of Luna, where basically fear would lead to both assets crashing and lead to the stabilizing mechanism not working anymore.
So is the idea, okay, I think I've got it. So to summarize, is the way that it remains stable is that the idea is that if UST ever loses its peg, it goes down in price, but people start buying in order to exchange it for Luna at $1 value, which should, in theory, create enough buying pressure of UST to then take it back to the peg, because it seems so stupid that you should be able to buy UST at I don't know,
99 cents
90,
and
85
restore.
cents,
Yeah.
whatever, anything less than $1 and restore it. So people would start buying it as you're able to exchange it for Luna, and as a consequence, it should restore its peg itself
and this
naturally.
constantly happened, right? Because they always this
is how it operated for how long?
Well, this is how UST was created since inception. I don't have the precise date, but this is how it operated. And if we go back, so the first thing that we saw happening was the curve pool, and that created the first pegging event, and that created fear, and that led to people withdrawing the first 2 billion from Anchor Protocol. And we have the market in a stressed situation. We have UST being slightly off peg, and then what from what we know right now, what happened is that attackers were able to borrow 100,000 Bitcoin, and also make an OTC deal to get $1 billion in UST, that they would use later on in the attack. So we are in the situation that the curve pool is at a slight imbalance. LFG, the Luna Foundation Guard, is reacting to that. They are preparing the new 4 pool on curve, moving liquidity to curve, and the peg is still at 97, or the peg, the UST value is still at 97.98 cents, right?
Okay, so here things are getting a bit.
Yes, they do.
A bit more complicated. You mentioned a 4 pool.
Yeah, let's ignore the 3 pool, 4 pool for now, because that's getting too complicated.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say, let's not go into too much detail. The question I wanted to ask is, you mentioned just the fact you mentioned attackers. So like, what's the deal with attackers here? Like, so is it the case that this was not necessarily a natural thing that happened? Like, this was potentially a coordinated, intentional
thing? I don't want to speculate on the reasons of why this happened, but if you just look at it from an economical point of view, right? You have you borrowed Bitcoin, you borrowed 100,000 Bitcoin, you have $1 billion in UST, you can create massive pressure by selling UST, by selling millions, hundreds of millions of UST, and this is what happened. And if you do that, that there's Luna Foundation Guard, and you would expect that the Luna Foundation Guard then reacts to the UST sell-off and starts selling Bitcoin themselves, so that they can buy UST and restore the peg. And if they start selling massive amounts of Bitcoin, and you borrowed Bitcoin, you can start selling that Bitcoin as well and drive the price down, and you create a massive short opportunity. And with a general, macro environment like right now, where stock markets are also, going down, you basically have the perfect environment to profit from shorting Bitcoin and to profit off falling Bitcoin prices. And this is what basically happened. So if we talk about attackers, there's been a lot of speculation who's behind that. And I don't want to go into speculation because, the events will be discussed in the future, and we will, get more information on that. But basically, it was a massive opportunity to earn hundreds in millions of dollars in shorting Bitcoin, and trying to create this instability and ultimately rendering Luna completely worthless as of right now, and also leading to UST not being able to recover to its $1 peg at all.
Yeah, so right now, I had it up on a tab, I can't find it now, but both of these things are right on the floor, right? Like,
yeah, Luna is like probably 4 or 5 0 digits, and then 1 or 2, and UST is 12 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
And now, so the Terra governance is discussing and planning and seeing how they can, or what they can do about the whole situation. because of course you still have, the ecosystem on the blockchain. You have so many devs, you have so many people who build other projects, protocols on the Terra blockchain, and they are trying to figure out, what to do, and if they can keep it alive, if they can move on and continue working on Terra as a blockchain. And the Luna Foundation Guard still has funds. Obviously, they still have money, and there's discussions about, trying to basically reimburse people who lost UST up to a certain amount, but it's absolutely unclear what's going to happen right now. And I think this is going to be a topic that's gonna stick with us for a couple more episodes to, talk about that as it evolves.
Yeah, I agree. Because everything that I heard is that, as far as I know, there were some talented, good, competent people working in this ecosystem, right? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't. I don't know. I feel a little bit. There's a lot of people kind of, and to be fair to the people who have criticized the ecosystem subsequently, supposedly lots of people did raise these criticisms earlier, and they were shouted down and made to appear stupid for raising points. And yeah, they have turned out to be correct in due time. And to be fair, I don't think the founders' behavior and conduct and choice of words ever particularly helped. But there seems to be, that aside, there does seem to be a whole load of good people creating good stuff.
Yes.
In that ecosystem. So the question is, what happens to that now? Like, do you have any sense of what happens to all of those people?
I think they're working very, very hard on finding a solution where they can continue building on the Terra blockchain and continue building on this ecosystem and get a fresh start. Because so many projects have reached quite an advanced stage there. And there's, as you said, a lot of highly and immensely talented people that have been working on their respective companies and projects on top of the Terra blockchain. And maybe, we might see a continuation with a partial refund of people who lost their savings in UST. But I think the big challenge, the big challenge is going to be the community as a whole regaining trust in Terra as a blockchain. Because now that, the initial flaw of the design of its stablecoin, of its algorithmic stablecoin has been exposed, and people have lost their life savings. People have lost everything that they put in, and some people did put everything into that protocol. It's going to be an incredibly hard challenge to regain the community's trust, even if you find a technical solution, and even if you find a way, to carry on with building that blockchain and that ecosystem. The real challenge begins afterwards, which is rebuilding the community's trust, and this is a very, very long process.
Yeah, I agree. I obviously hope that they are able to find some sort of reasonable solution for those people. One of the I think that's a really good explanation. But the final thing I was thinking that's quite interesting to me from a lawyer's perspective is this missing, how much is it? 220 million Bitcoin? Or, I'm just saying random numbers that start with a 2. But DC Investor has been quite hot on the fact that there's a certain amount of Bitcoin that's gone missing in this whole escapade. And he's being very persistent in asking for information as to what happened to it, with backed up audited reports as to what happened to it. And I don't think we have found out yet.
I've seen a report on that as well. I don't have the precise number, but I've seen a report tracking wallets and how the Luna Foundation Guard moved their Bitcoin. And the issue is that, once they get moved to an exchange as Gemini or Binance, it's almost impossible to track fully track what happens with the funds from there. I mean, unless if they, get withdrawn and sent back to the initial address of or one of the addresses of the LFG, it's possible to track them. But if not, it leads to exactly that situation that you mentioned, where part of the Bitcoin that the foundation is holding is unaccounted for, and people don't know what happened to that.
Yes. The thing about this, though, is that I've spoken to a few people about it who seem to think, oh, it goes to an exchange, so now we don't know what's going to happen to it. And for me, as a lawyer who's familiar with contracts, in almost every single contract that you will ever sign with any corporation or anything, when it comes to your information, there will always be a clause that says, under any sort of criminal, like, yes, we hold your private information, blah, 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 blah. We won't give it to anyone. We'll protect it, blah, blah, blah. And then there'll be carve-outs. There'll be a clause in the thing to say under which conditions they will give up your information. And one of those conditions is always under any sort of criminal investigation or anything of that nature. So I don't know whether, I obviously do not know if there was any sort of nefarious activity here. I don't understand the full extent of it, and I don't know. Well, we just simply don't know what's happened. But to the extent that there needed to be an investigation into it, like, yeah, these centralized exchanges will comply with the law. They're not going to not comply with the law. If there's just a suspicion of criminal activity, and the laws and the law and the bodies of law enforcement need to investigate, they will comply. But some people in this space seem to not seem to be able to compute that.
Yeah, and this is where people start speculating, and I think where they, on the one hand, start speculating, on the other hand, obviously ask the important critical questions: what happened with the funds? But just because, as you said, we don't know right now what happened on the exchanges, it doesn't mean that we won't know that like at any time in the future, because there's going to be an investigation into that. And as you said, the exchanges will comply, and more information will come to light. But do you think, with your legal background, that an event of this massive scale could, lead or could start a new wave of regulators trying to regulate stablecoins, to regulate how algorithmic stablecoins work, or to really crack down on stablecoin regulation?
So ultimately the answer is I don't know, because this stuff is very, very technical, and I lean on you quite heavily to understand all of this stuff. My expertise is often in other areas. But the thing that I would say is, and this I know because I specialize in reputation management and media disputes, and the way that the founder spoke and published stuff for a significant period of time does not look good. Like, it looks so bad, so arrogant, so unbelievably short-sighted, and that will, even if people weren't going to regulate it, you sort of want to regulate that guy. I want to regulate that guy. He seems like a person who's completely out of control and a megalomaniac. And if and then me, that I'm someone who's like fairly anti-establishment. Yeah. Like, I kind of want to get away from regulation. I want to move away from all that sort of stuff. But the guy seems completely out of control, and it's such a shame, because I think it's I mean, a few people have spoken about it. It's just excessive pride. I don't know. It's and so many useful, interesting people and talented people building on the thing. But yeah, I think it's going to get people's attention, and people are going to want to regulate it. And if they didn't have a reason to do so before, they definitely do now. Whether that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And also, it's going to be interesting to see one of the proposals that is currently discussed in the Terra governance is going to play out where they're discussing a repayment of UST holders in USDC. That's going to happen in tiers, meaning that if they looked at the total fund distribution, and it's quite heavy on whales, with a small number of people holding the majority or a massive part of the assets at least, and if they look at the funds and if they use 1 to 1.5 billion of US dollars that are still available, they could basically restore all wallets who were holding up to 250,000 UST and refund them in USDC, because I think it is, according to the proposal, that the top 100 anchor addresses have over 92% of the funds. So basically you could make almost the entire community whole by refunding people up to 250k UST in USDC, and this would quote unquote only take 1 to 1.5 billion to do that. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see if this is going to go through.
That's interesting. So the proposal would be to reimburse a majority instead of the majority.
And I think the
holders.
most two important lines in that is, and I'm just reading from the proposal right now, with 1.46 billion US dollars, we will be able to refund 99.6% of all Anchor wallets, which is probably over 95% of all Anchor users. The refund amount will be approximately 17.6% of all outstanding Anchor funds. So this is quite interesting if you look, how whales code the distribution on Anchor protocol really is. Because if this is a proposal that, and it's very difficult for me, to evaluate right now if this proposal is part of the Terra ecosystem revival plan could go through and would work out like that. But if this were to work out, I think it would be also a massive first step in, and you talking about reputation management, it would be a massive first step in starting to restore the community's trust.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, sounds good, man. I think that's, like, as you said, I think this is something we're going to come back to a few times as things progress. I know that our weekly chats are called NFT World, which obviously is the main focus of our stuff because we love NFTs. However, as I've spent more time here, and I'm sure you felt the same, you start to realize that a solid foundational understanding of these other ecosystems is incredibly important to understanding your NFTs, because everything is connected in this respect.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. So let's wrap it up there, man. Thanks very much for all your insight and experience with this quite complicated and technical information. We will come back to it as things progress and hopefully chat. I think we're going to chat later on this week, right?
We're going to record from VeeCon. Yeah.
At VeeCon. That would be cool. So enjoy your meetings. Have a nice time. We'll talk soon, and let's get some information out on
Absolutely.
Airdrop season.
And talk soon.
Cool, man. Talk
Bye.
soon. Bye-bye.